Now really let's see those chests come out. And fling and in. And fling and in. And fling. Matron, take them away.
Classic Carry On. And that saucy brand of seaside humour has thrilled cinema goers for over 45 years. Not only that, it took a group of relatively unknown actors and gave them a status that not even they could have dreamed of. All the more remarkable, then, when you listen to comedy historian Richard Dacre explaining the background to the launch of what has become one of the British film industry's most treasured institutions.
It was a time when there was a bit of a crisis because there were no real clowns working in British cinema except for Norman Wisdom, who was the one exception. And British cinema comedy was dominated by scripted films drawing on the Ealing traditions but broadened out slightly. The Genevieve, the Doctor films, stuff like that, with a kind of middle class aspect. And I think what British cinema was lacking were the working class robust comedies that we associate with clowns. And what Peter Rogers and Gerald Thomas did very cleverly was to take that kind of scripted comedy but give it that robustness, that working class robustness, by casting a group of actors that were skilled in comedy, weren't themselves clowns. It's a very clever idea, very well worked out, and of course became extremely popular, and the series ran for around 30 films.
The films are as popular now as they were then, and former stars Jack Douglas and Sid James give their views on why they still appeal today.
I think the one critic got it dead right. He said that the Carry On is the one kind of movie where they can show a nude and still keep it naughty. Well, that really is what it is.
Today, language is something which has become part of our television entertainment, which is a tragedy to me, because I would hate to sit there. My children are grown up now, but if they weren't, and they were sitting with me, and I suddenly heard swear words and things like that, and sexual situations, I would be very offended. You never had that in the Carry-Ons. They were naughty, but they weren't filthy.
Series producer Peter Rogers also has his own theory as to why the films were so successful.
The sort of comedy that had been done before, and will be done again, presumably, when we forget about political correctness and that sort of thing. It is indigenous. It's not made for America or anywhere else. It's made for us here. It's a home product, and it seems to have gone round the world, even America, quite successfully. Politics and comedy don't go together unless you want to sit in the House of Commons and have a good laugh. The critics panned every film I made, and quite viciously sometimes, and ended up giving me an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Critics Circle. I mean, how ironic can it be?
Ironic it may be, but it's a well-known fact that the Carry On team were highly trained professionals. All rather unnerving then for newcomers like Jack Douglas. But when I spoke to him at his home earlier this year, I discovered a very different view, and he tells a nice story about his first day on set.
It was an honour, a great honour, that when I arrived for my first day on the picture, I went into the canteen at Pinewood, and I sat there, and I'd no sooner sat down than up came Sid James. And he said, "It's Jack Douglas, isn't it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Hello, Jack." He said, "Have you got a coffee?" I said, "No." He said, "Hang on, I'll get you one." And he went over and got me a cup of coffee and put it down and said, "Sugar and milk?" I said, "No, I just take a spoonful of sugar black." "Oh, right." And we started chatting, and then up came Kenneth Williams. And he said, "Oh, Jack Douglas?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, good." And he looked straight at Sid, and he said, "Haven't you got him a biscuit or a cake or anything?" And he said, "No." He said, "Disgraceful." And Kenneth Williams went over and came back with a plate of biscuits, which he put down in front of me. And from that moment, I was a member of the team.
It must have made it so much easier for you.
Oh, I was petrified, because I thought they could easily resent a newcomer to an established team. But they didn't. They welcomed me, and I've been one instance in Carry On Dick. Kenneth Williams said, "Look, they've written this line for me. It's a very funny line, but it's wrong for me. Why don't you do it?" And I did it, and it was one of the best laughs in the picture. And Kenneth Williams was, if anything, more pleased than I was the fact that he'd given me that line. There's very few comics have got that ability.
Another newcomer to the series was Kenneth Cope, and here he explained to me how he was encouraged by established stars such as Sid James.
I was lucky in effect, because what used to happen with Peter Rogers, the producer, was anybody who was rather large on telly, he would use in his productions, because he knew that television viewers would go along to see that particular person, like Jim Dale and whatever, because they were big on the telly, and they stuck them in with the regular team. But the regular team was like the repertory company, and they still delivered the goods, still delivered the raucous laughter. We always came in under budget. I mean, it wasn't because of meanness. It was just that everybody who was in it knew what they were doing, and any newcomer was treated so properly and well that they just let it in, and they got their work done, and they went away very happily. My first venture into it was Carry On at Your Convenience, and I had about 3 pages of dreadful dialogue, really difficult dialogue to do in front of Sid, who was the shop, he was the firm's manager, and I was the shop steward, and it was the tap setters. It was just terrible unionised sort of jargon.
I'm sorry, Mr. Plummer, but these men cannot put this fitting onto those things.
Why not? What's the matter with it?
I stand to be corrected, of course, but I think I'm right in stating that this here is a combined tap and waste pipe control.
That's right. What about it?
So whose job is it to fit it then?
What are you talking about? Ernie can do it, can't you, Ernie?
Of course I can, Sid.
Oh no, because Ernie is a tap fitter.
Willie can do it then.
Oh no, because Willie, as you well know, is a waste pipe fitter.
Right, then they can both do it.
Oh no, because if a tap fitter does it, that means he's doing a waste pipe fitter's job. If the waste pipe fitter does it, that means he's doing a tap fitter's job.
Well, what the hell does it matter as long as they're both working?
That's what I was saying.
If you'll pardon me, you don't have a say. This is union business.
Well, it is our union, isn't it?
Exactly. And for that reason, you do as it bloody tells you. Now listen, under a redundancy agreement dated March 10th, 1969...
All right, we know all about that, but we're not making anybody redundant, are we?
These men are doing their own jobs and each other's jobs in the same time.
All right, Mr. Spanner, what's your solution?
It's not the union's job to give solutions.
You can say that again.
Mind you, just to show that I'm not trying to make difficulties, if you was to scrap this fitting and make 2 separate fittings for tap and waste pipe control...
Impossible. That basin was made for only that one fitting.
That's typical, that, isn't it? Isn't that typical? I offer them a solution and immediately they start making difficulties.
Hang on, I got it. Suppose they work together. Ernie places the fitting in the hole, connects it to the inlet pipe, then Willie connects it to the outlet and does it up. How's that?
You're missing the point, Mr. Plummer. You've still got 2 men doing 2 men's jobs in the same time.
What?
Which is the same as 1 man doing 1 man's job in half the time.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, crikey, if every worker did his job in half the time, the country would soon be in a right old mess, wouldn't it? Bernie?
Now, wait a minute. You can't bring him out.
I'm sorry. Until I acquaint the Union General Secretary with all the facts, you'll leave me no alternative. Everybody out!
Many critics subscribed to the view that there was a general decline in standards during the 1970s, a view shared by comedian and writer Morwenna Banks.
I think it's possibly true to say that the Carry-On films were killed off by political correctness. And I think that was, at the time, a necessary thing. I think, there did need to come a point where everyone went, oh, excuse me, you can't really just let the women do that, let them be kind of viragos or kind of, sexy dollies. You have to kind of acknowledge that times have moved on. They were racist to a certain extent. And I think that, they were kind of perpetrating stereotypes that became no longer helpful.
When you say I'm PC, I mean, the women always are pretty strong characters. I mean, there's dolly birds, but the guys always fall over or fall down a manhole or walk into a wall where they're looking at some short-skirted dolly bird. So I don't think they are particularly. I mean, it's just good innuendo. I mean, it's a tradition of British comedy that goes back hundreds of years, and I think carry on the tradition. And for a series of films that first started 45 years ago now, to still be getting audiences and still be getting laughs is amazing.
No, matron, I was taking a shortcut.
I don't know why, Doctor, but I have a feeling you're trying to avoid me.
Oh, no! Whatever gave you that idea? But you shouldn't be in here, Think of the girls. They need watching.
Oh, to hell with the girls.
To hell with the girls. Matron.
I think it's quite important when you're thinking about the Carry-On films to recognise there are kind of 3 distinct stages. There are the early ones that are scripted by Norman Houdis, and these tend to be satires on national institutions, the army and the days of national service, national health service, the schools, and then you get the much more broader sexual innuendo, double entendre, which we associate with the films of Talbot Rothwell. And then when he retires, basically they're worthless. They fall prey to not being able to maintain the balance between a new explicitness with the lack of censorship, and the basic repressiveness which is essential to the comedy of the Carry On film. Technically speaking, the Carry On team were great because it was an ensemble cast, and there was this opposition between them all. They all wanted to steal every scene they were in, but because they were cleverly written, they couldn't dominate a film because they wouldn't be in all of the scenes or whatever. And I think that is something that people can learn from, that you can bring in these rather contrasting personalities. A lot of them didn't seem to like each other very much, and with this intent to steal every scene, they actually heighten their performances, and that slightly heightened performance adds to the humour.
For an alternative view as to why standards may have dropped, let's turn once again to Jack Douglas.
Well, I think the writer of any television show is the complete background to that comedy situation. It is then taken by the comedians or actors, whatever the case may be, and turned into an entertainment. But when Talbot Rothwell died, he was the finest writer for the Carry On pictures ever. And when we lost him, other writers came in, but they didn't have that wonderful magic that Talbot Rothwell gave us.
If you look at some of the films, of course the first few films were written by a chap called Norman Hudis.
That's right.
How do you compare the two?
What do you mean, Hudis and Rothwell?
In terms of writing.
Oh, I think they were both brilliant men, and that they had the Carry-Ons in the palm of their hands, and they were able to transform it to script, which we transformed into humour or entertainment.
What do you think of the new film that's coming out soon?
I would like to have a coin in my hand and toss it in the air, because I think that's exactly what it could be. We don't know. There's a golden rule in show business. If you have a comedy venue that works, don't change it. What they're going to do with this new Carry On picture is to change a lot of the ideas and the scenes, and I think you don't do that. If you, all right, we've got to change the people, because unfortunately there's only 3 of us left. But you basically keep to what you had. You remake the Carry On pictures in modern day with different writers and different people, but you don't change the format.
Will it be a winner?
Again, I'll tell you after it's come out. I don't know. I would say it's something you can't say. I would be delighted if it was, but I don't know.
Because after the appalling flop that was Carry On Columbus, could you really understand when the rumours came about that they were going to make this one? Could you really think, oh my God, not another one?
Well, no, because I don't think any of us have the ability to turn around and say on the screen, that won't work. You can say that won't work after you've seen it on the screen. But up until then, you don't know, so you go ahead and do it. And it may turn out to be one of the best Carry On pictures ever made. Nobody would be happier than Jim Dale, Barbara Windsor, myself, Peter Rogers.
And it's to Peter Rogers and Gerald Thomas, the men whose vision it was, that the series owes its legacy. It's been seen by many as helping to define British culture, a fact heartily endorsed by Robert Ross, author of The Carry On Companion.
There's a document for social history in this country for the last 25, 30 years or whatever. It's great. I mean, if you look at documentaries from the 60s, it's very much academics lifting a rock and saying, here's some working class people, let's watch them for a bit. Whereas you watch a Carry On film, it's real life, sort of. If
you try to find a comparison to them today with today's television, you're going to have a very difficult job. I mean, the older forms of films and television that we had then were so many and varied. Today we don't have that variation, and we certainly don't have that variation in comedy. And the Carry-Ons do, and the Carry-Ons still have it, and they still make us laugh.
And as long as they're on video and DVD, they always will make us laugh. It remains to be seen how successful the new film will be. Only time will tell. But the series has established itself alongside some of Hollywood's greatest epics, and it's for the classic films and classic humour that the series will always be remembered. Names like Sid James, Kenneth Williams, Hattie Jakes and Kenneth Connor will always remain synonymous with the series. And that's why they, along with other people like Peter Rogers and Jack Douglas, would urge us to carry on, please.
Keep writing, fans. Don't go away from the carry-ons.